Well, welcome and thank you for joining us. My name is Danielle Defaw, and I'm an associate professor of reading and language arts and the field placement director for the College of Education, Health and Human Services here at the University of Michigan Dearborn. I am so excited to be here today to welcome Dearborn alumna Robin Wilson for today's Alumni Engagement Speaker Series. Although our paths have crossed in various ways over the last few years, I vividly remember working with Robin in fall 2016 when she enrolled in a course that I teach at UMD focused on writing methodology for elementary teachers. Together, we explored what it means to be a teacher writer, an identity that was so easy, I think, for Robin to claim as she was already a published children's book author. The third grade students who had Mrs. Wilson as their teacher for the writing clinic that we hosted at Dearborn were beyond lucky to learn from her as she shared her writing and publishing insight with them. Robin also supported the Young Authors Festival that year when we had Christopher Paul Curtis at the Mardigian Library talking with third through fifth grade students and their families about his books, especially The Watsons Go to Birmingham, 1963. I am hopeful to have Robin as an author at the Young Authors Festival in the future. And I am delighted that we can hear from Robin on her experience today with writing her children's book, Mama Got Rhythm, Daddy Got Rhyme. A little bit later, we will actually have the honor of Robin reading her book aloud to us today. And before we jump into our conversation, I would like to share a little on Robin's career and achievements. Robin Wilson is a literacy nonprofit founder, published children's author, poet, certified elementary school teacher, nonprofit consultant, and motivational speaker. As founder and CEO of Robin Wilson Educational Consulting, LLC, she combines her lived experiences, research knowledge, and professional experience to guide nonprofit organizations in developing effective strategies for serving youth, especially young girls and women. A graduate of the University of Michigan Dearborn, Robin earned her Bachelor of Arts degree in elementary education with a concentration in reading and a minor in English language arts. Currently, Robin teaches first grade at a foreign language immersion school in Detroit Public Schools Community District. We are truly honored to welcome Robin today and hear from her on her time as a student at Dearborn and how she made her passion a reality by having her children's book published. Thank you so much for joining us, Robin Wilson, and for being here today.
Thank you for having me. And I consider it a great honor that we have the opportunity to have this conversation together because as you shared in your gracious introduction, that we've had a chance to work together and have many conversations, not only about writing, but many other things. And so I couldn't think of anyone better to have the conversation with. So I'm excited.
Well, I am truly honored. And now I have the honor of asking you a few questions that I know all of our listeners would love to hear your answers to. My first question for you today, Robin, is please share with us a little bit about your background and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Well, I am a proud native of Inkster, Michigan. I was born in Southfield and raised in Inkster, Michigan. I spent the majority of my life there until I married my husband and we moved to Dearborn. And so I decided to pursue education for several reasons. So the first being that while I have a passion for stories, and I've always had a passion for storytelling, even when I was a young girl, there's a funny story that my mother shares with me sometimes, and she still does, that when I went to math tutoring when I was younger, the math tutor that I had, she told my mother that she really enjoyed working with me, but she said, Robin, she likes to share her stories, and sometimes it's a little hard to get her back on track. And I think to a large degree, I have always loved to tell stories and to share my creative ideas. And it was not only a way for me to be creative, but also I think to to kind of compensate for some other areas that I wasn't the strongest in at the time. So while linguistically, I've always been gifted in that area in terms of telling stories. But when I was younger, I was a struggling reader. And I know that you and I, we've had conversations about that before, but it was really something that I was self-conscious about because I was curious intellectually, I was creative, and I was able to express myself in many different ways, especially through the arts. That was a huge outlet for me when I was younger. However, my struggles around reading and even some challenges in math when I was younger really made me insecure. And so it was only until I was 13 years old that I finally opened up and I shared with then Bible study leader, youth Bible study leader, that I was having some challenges. And she knew that I was having some type of challenges because I just put my Bible down and I walked out of the Bible study and I was crying when she found me. She walked out after me and she asked me what was wrong. And I tearfully told her that I could not complete the reflection that they were asking us to complete. The youth, we had just heard a Bible study lesson, and they were asking us to complete a written reflection. And so I was struggling to fully express all of my ideas on the page. So instead of just raising my hand and asking for help, I just walked out. But I share that because you asked me the question, tell the listening audience a little bit more about my background. And I always like to share that with individuals because I think that sometimes when you think about writers or you think about authors, sometimes you hear their stories and it's, oh, I've always loved to write or I've always loved to tell stories. And for me, I've always loved to tell stories, but I did not always love to write. And it wasn't because I did not have creative ideas to share. It was simply because I struggled early on, but because of the support of my family and individuals in my community, I was able to overcome that challenge.
I appreciate you sharing those details so much with us. That's
Yeah.
part of that's part of your story, but it also, I think, inspires people who are reading your books, who are learning from you, your first graders, who are benefiting from someone who is successful in literacy in so many beautiful ways and giving back. But I love that you have this background that understands what it's like for those kids who want to write or want to read and struggle with it too. And that just makes you, I think, even a stronger literacy expert than someone who's just always done so well with it. I know we've shared that story before, and I'm so thankful that you've chosen this career in literacy. And as a children's book author, oh,
Yes, I
so
know
thank
that's
you.
something that we share because you're also a writer. And I think that the first time that I took your course was when I started to refer to myself as being a teacher writer because I identified as a teacher and a writer, but I had never put the two together. And so I remember when I took your course, it was the first time that I actually started to use that, even in certain essays that I would write for graduate school. When I was applying to graduate school, even I started to refer to myself as a teacher writer.
And so I'm gonna piggyback off of that a little bit, Robin, and tell me, how do you feel being a teacher writer impacts you with your first graders, or even as an author too? How are you seeing these, experiences, these identities blend together?
So one thing that I love about being a teacher writer is that I can use different modes of learning to encourage my scholars to enjoy the writing process. So I taught first grade last year, and this year I actually have kindergarten, and with them and even with my first graders that I had last year, I love to incorporate art into the writing process. So I will have them to sometimes draw pictures, and then we'll talk about the pictures. We do a lot of talking around their drawings, and then I will model for them how to write the words to go along with the pictures that they've drawn, to label the images that they've written in their books or on the paper that we use. And I think that while they may not recognize it, though all of those skills are necessary to become an excellent writer, because it helps with your thinking process, whether you're drawing a picture or you're talking about it orally. It helps them to think about what they're writing about on multiple levels. And I think that sometimes just having different ways for scholars to access their thinking, their meta cognitive thinking, and to have different ways to express themselves is really important for their learning as well as their creativity. And so even though as an author, I do not typically draw pictures before I start to write, when I was younger, that was another area that I really excelled in, was drawing. So I like to bring in different modes of communication into the writing process in my classroom, because I know that it's helping not only their creative process, but it's helping their thinking and it's also helping them set the foundation to become successful writers later on.
And then the inspiration they get from having their last year's, the first graders having their first grade teacher last year, and now this year you're with your kindergartners. I'm certain they just feel enamored, or look at you just, with awe, knowing that you are a published children's book author and just dreaming of wanting to be an author someday too. It's what, many children will talk about. And I can't imagine the impact that you're having on your young scholars. They are so lucky to have you, Robin.
It's actually interesting because it was only until last year that I actually shared with them that I'm a children's author. They did not know, because it wasn't something that I shared with them. And I think that it just never came up. It wasn't because I didn't want to share it with them. It was just, when you're in the classroom, a lot of focus is on the scholars and their learning. And until my book was released, the second edition of my book was released last year, then I think it started to come up in conversations because I had a reason to mention it to them. I shared my book with them because I wanted them to see it. It was something that my school also spotlighted, and the district as well. They actually did a district story, and I was really honored that they did that. And so when they did that, when the district published the story and when my principal gave what we call a shout out, I had some scholars of mine that I had taught previously come into the room and say, Mrs. Wilson, I didn't know that you had written a book. And so I had an opportunity to finally share with them even that, yes, I am a children's author, but I think that sometimes that is just it. We go about doing things that we love to do, sometimes outside of school, and we don't always think to bring some of those things into our conversations with our scholars. So I'm glad that you brought that up, because I'm actually learning how important that is, that my scholars have a chance to get some insights around what I do outside of the classroom, and that, yes, Mrs. Wilson also has things that I do outside of the classroom that are interesting. And I think that they've enjoyed learning about that side of me.
Well, I'm certain they have enjoyed learning that side of you. I know I am certainly enjoying learning the side of you too, because as well as we know each other, I'm still learning so much about you through these questions. My next question actually relates to your book. Can you tell us a little bit about your book and tell us about your inspiration behind creating it?
Sure. So I grew up in a musical household. And my mother, she sung in choir, and my father, he had a studio in our basement. And so growing up, I heard a lot of different music in our household. My parents were born in the 1950s, and so they are from the Motown era. And anyone who knows anything about Motown music or loves Motown music, you know about Stevie Wonder, you know about the Marvelettes and Smokey Robinson. And so those are the types of artists that I heard regularly in our household. We had a stereo. And so for those of you who have never seen a stereo, I encourage you to Google it. But I'm telling you, my parents were from the Motown era, so that yes, they had a stereo, and it required the records to put on on the player, the stereo player. But I enjoyed listening to that music. In fact, I like, one of the stories that I love to tell is the one of the ways that I learned how to spell the word respect was listening to Aretha Franklin's Respect. And my mother played that song for me until I remembered how to spell the word. So when it came to my grandparents, I knew my grandparents and my great grandparents. And I didn't really realize how much of a privilege that was until I became an adult, because what I realized was that not all of my peers actually knew their grandparents or their great grandparents for that matter. But because I grew up in a multi-generational family, I also heard a lot of blues music, a lot of jazz. My grandfather was from Mississippi, and my grandmother on my maternal side of the family, she was born in Boley, Oklahoma. So you not only had these generational musical styles, but you also had these regional ways of talking. Because when my grandmother said something to me, other than calling me by my name, I was Gail. Okay. So I'm just saying that to say that, I grew up with a lot of different language, generational language, certain phrases that maybe even perhaps some of my peers didn't necessarily hear if they didn't grow up with their grandparents or their great grandparents. So I'm thankful for that, because as it relates to my love of music and my love of writing, what I've learned to do is to not shy away from using some of that language that I grew up with. And I think that it has taken me some time to really kind of embrace that, because there's a certain way that we have to talk in certain spaces in order to be taken seriously. But I code switch. I do. I code switch. And I think that there is an intelligence there when you know how to code switch. And that's okay. It's okay to code switch. And even when I go into classrooms and I do book readings, I don't shy away now from doing that. I don't shy away from code switching. Or sometimes, even when my young scholars, when I'm asking them, oh, what did you do this weekend? And they might say my auntie or my nana or whoever, whatever they use in terms of their language to describe what they did. I don't correct them. I let them speak to me and use the language that they would use with their families, because I understand how important that is. And I think that's important when we're encouraging young scholars to write, even in the classroom, is to use those experiences and that language, because that's a part of their culture and who they are.
Absolutely. And that's just a way of honoring their family's experiences, their voices.
That's
And
right.
you're connecting with them, and you're showing them love. It's an act of love, isn't it? By just continuing to engage with them and hear their stories and share your stories. And I love this multi-generational family tale, these experiences that you've had, and the benefits you had as a child, knowing your grandparents and your great grandparents. It is a privilege. And
It is.
I knew my great grandparents and grandparents. I actually, until this moment, never really thought about what a privilege that is. So
Absolutely.
I love that inspiration and that background of your book. That is it makes a special book even more special.
Yes. And I sometimes people, they ask me, are you the little girl in your story? Because my story is about jazz and how it inspired or influenced R&B music. And Jasmine is the main character and her parents, their last name is Rhymes. And so I've often been asked, "Oh, are you the little girl in your story?" And I will share with people, no, I wasn't really trying to recreate, you know, Jasmine as an extension of myself when I wrote the story. However, I do think that my experience of growing up in a household that was full of music did influence how I wrote the story. And her parents, they do a lot of dancing and singing with her within the story, and they're really trying to help her to understand how their music is related to her music, because her dilemma, Jasmine's dilemma, is that she thinks that her parents' music is old. And, you know, a lot of young people, they feel that way unless they have really young parents. You know, they do sometimes feel that way. Oh, that's old. Or maybe their grandparents' music, they think of it as old because it sounds different from the music that they listen to. And I listen to a lot of different types of music. That includes R&B, soul, gospel, jazz. So I don't just listen to jazz music, but I love a lot of different music genres, including pop. I really enjoy it. And so I encourage young people to, as they're reading the book, to really think about what their musical experiences have been. I love sharing my experience, of course, but as you pointed out, it's really important to encourage young scholars to use their voices and share what their experiences have been, because I think that some scholars are able to really relate to Jasmine and the story, because they probably can think of a grandparent or maybe even a parent who has played some type of favorite hit of theirs and they just didn't get it. There was some type of disconnect because, you know, it's just not of their generation. But I hope it also encourages parents to do like Mama Rhymes and Daddy Rhymes does in the book, and really take time to explain more about the music that they listen to and expose their children to different musical genres, because it's important. It is.
Well, in so many ways, it's another way of speaking,
That's right.
it really is. And it's a way to feel, even if you struggle with reading and writing, you're not going to struggle with music. It's something that's just a part of us and
That's right.
can relate to. When you think about your scholars and you think about these connections that, you've gained from them and they've gained from you when it comes to just that reciprocal relationship with teaching, it makes me think about your experiences at U of M Dearborn, Robin. And I'm wondering, what kinds of experiences did you have, or does anything stand out to you as experiences that helped you create this work of art?
You know, I've had many wonderful experiences at the University of Michigan Dearborn. I'm so honored that I had the experiences that I did while I was there. One of those experiences was being a part of the creative writing competition. That stands out to me because it gave me an opportunity to compete. I had been writing for quite some time before I started entering the competition, but I'll never forget the first year that I entered the competition. I won second place for poetry, and that actually was the second children's manuscript that I wrote, and it's an alphabet poem, and it's a different spin on the alphabet from a jazz perspective. And so there's a lot of rhyming and syncopation, even in the way that I wrote the poem. And so I think it's one thing to write something, but then it's another thing to have someone else acknowledge your work as being quality. And when I won second place in the poetry writing category, it was affirming for me. And that was an experience that stands out. And another experience that I really appreciated having was I was able to do study abroad while I was at the University of Michigan Dearborn. And I was able to start really diving deeper into my love of language. So I started to learn French. And if I didn't have those experiences while I was at U of M, I don't know that I would have even come to the school that I'm currently at, because the classroom that I'm actually teaching in right now is the same classroom that I did my foreign language immersion practicum in. And the teacher who was my practicum teacher, she retired last year. And that is actually how I came into the position, because she recommended me to my principal, and my principal knows that I know French and I love the language. So she said, well, Mrs. Wilson, would you like the opportunity to teach French kindergarten this year? And I didn't think that I would have an opportunity so soon to do that, because a lot of individuals who work within our building, who teach within our building, they have been in the classroom for years. And so I'm actually among the youngest teachers within our building. And so sometimes you don't really know when certain opportunities are going to open up. But for me, that door opened in part because of the connection that I had to the school even before I came to work there as a full-time teacher, because of my experience at U of M. And those are just two experiences that I can think of that really were transformative. But if I could give one more.
Of course.
The other experience that I had that actually brought me to the University of Michigan was my experience through the SOAR program. And for those who are not familiar with the SOAR program, Ellen Judge Gonzalez is over that program, and she is amazing. I love Ellen. To this day, I still will send her periodic emails, because I want to not only stay in touch with her to let her know how I'm doing, but I also still receive information to keep me updated on what's going on campus, because there's still a lot of individuals who I met through my involvement in the SOAR program who I still stay in touch with. In fact, when my book the second edition was released last November, there were quite a few faculty as well as former students, alumni, who came to the Charles H. Wright Museum for my book signing. And so I share that just to say there is a community within the University of Michigan Dearborn that once you have come through the programs there, at least from my perspective, my experience has always been that you build lifelong relationships. You may not stay in touch with everyone. Everyone, I think, has different levels of relationship with different individuals on campus, but you're going to stay in touch with someone because if you have gone through any program at the University of Michigan Dearborn, you forge some type of connections with people who you stay in touch with even long after you graduated. And our relationship even is a testament to that, because I appreciate the support that you've continued to give me even since I've graduated from the University of Michigan Dearborn.
You know, that's the best part when you think about those connections that you've made here at U of M Dearborn. You know, those have a lasting impact that casts a ripple that we never really know where it ends. And I know you've experienced that in your own life with people like Ellen and other really just wonderful people who have inspired you and worked with you throughout your program of study at U of M Dearborn. But it also makes me think, Robin, about the impact you're going to have and continue to have on people who are awarded your scholarship that you established, the Robin M. Wilson Scholarship that you've designed to support students pursuing a degree in business or education with a documented learning difference. Can you tell us about your inspiration for establishing such an important scholarship?
Absolutely. So one of the things that I've started to talk more openly about within the last year is being diagnosed with dyslexia, and specifically dyslexia and math, because I know that in looking at me, a lot of people would not know that I am dyslexic. And in fact, I did not know that I was dyslexic for the majority of my life, because it was only until I was 26 years old that I actually received a formal diagnosis. And that was before I came to the University of Michigan. And so it was a tremendous relief. And I say that because I was excelling in a lot of different areas, and I had overcome my challenges with reading, as I shared with you earlier. But unbeknownst to a lot of people around me, those who were close to me, they knew that I still had some challenges in my math. But if you were not very close to me and you did not know that, you just would not know that I had those struggles. And so, because I was very frustrated and I was not getting the type of breakthrough that you would expect for someone who was studying, working with tutors, and just constantly getting help, I just was not turning that corner when it came to math. And so I went and I did some research, and I reached out to the Wayne State Psychology Clinic, and I scheduled an appointment to be assessed. Now, I did not know what they were going to come back and tell me, because, to be quite honest with you, at the time, I did not realize that you can be dyslexic in math. I thought that dyslexia primarily dealt with reading challenges, and it does, but it is a spectrum learning disorder. And so you can be mildly dyslexic, moderately dyslexic, or severely dyslexic. And you can have challenges in reading, writing, math, or all three. And so at the point where they did the assessment for me, they did not conclude that I was dyslexic in reading and writing, but they did conclude that I was dyslexic in math. And they also gave me the diagnosis of ADD. Now, once I received the diagnosis, for me, as I shared, it was somewhat a relief, because I felt like I had an answer. I finally had an answer. And I felt like, because now I had an answer, I could do my research. I could get the services that I needed in order to be successful in starting to pass some of the tests that, quite frankly, were just holding me back. I was doing work at the time in the community. I had established a career even working around literacy in the community. So I was well known, for being a literacy advocate, but little did some people know, many people didn't know that I still was having challenges just passing certain math tests at the university level. And so by the time that I came to the University of Michigan, I had the diagnosis, I had the documentation. So I was able to register with the Office for Student Disability Services. And Judy was a huge supporter of mine while I was there. If ever I needed just some additional time in taking tests, she would arrange for there to be some additional time given. And I rarely would go to the disability services office on campus to take tests. I would prefer to stay within the classroom, which I did. So even for a lot of my peers, I don't think that they knew that I had a learning difference. And to be quite honest with you, even though now I know that I have a learning difference, I rarely say that I have a learning disability. And the language is important to me. I don't shame anyone for using that language, but I just tend to say a learning difference, because for me, there's a lot of things that I'm gifted in, and there's a lot of things that I'm good at. And the same is true for a lot of individuals who have learning differences, and it's okay if they want to say they have a learning disability, or even if they have a physical disability. But I want people to understand that you can have a learning difference and still be gifted. And in fact, there's a lot of individuals who, unbeknownst to a lot of other people, are like myself, who may be dyslexic either in math or in reading or writing. And they've done a lot of great things, and they're talented. There's authors, there's actors, there's doctors, scientists, you name it. And you can still be successful in having a disability or having a learning difference. And so for me, that is why it was important for me to give back in this way, because I know that there are a lot of talented and gifted scholars at the University of Michigan who have a documented learning difference or physical disability, and who are pursuing education or business, which are two fields that I've built a career in. And so I wanted to give back in this way so that someone who may identify as having a learning difference or disability, they have funding available that's specifically designated for them that they can use towards completing their degree. And that's important because, well, it's not cheap. Our education is not cheap. And U of M is one of the leading universities in our nation. And it's worth every penny. But I know that personally, when I was at U of M, if I had not received all of the scholarship funding that I received while I was at U of M, I think that I would have graduated, but I think that it would have taken me more time. And so for that reason, I'm thankful that I was able to receive a substantial amount of scholarship funding. And that is what made it possible for me to get to the finish line and to proudly walk across the stage.
And it must just feel amazing knowing that you're going to be a part of that story for people who walk across that stage, who, finish their degree, and especially with the learning difference, because
That's
it's
right.
just empowers them. Because I think when you have that understanding, especially in education and business, it gives you an opportunity to really, inspire. It gives you an opportunity to just keep pushing forward and not letting anything hold you back. And that's certainly what I see in so many of the initiatives that you're a part of, and all of the ways that you advocate for literacy and for people. It really is a wonderful thing. And so, Robin, with that last question, we are now honored to have you share your book with us. So I'm going to turn it over to you so that we can hear you read aloud your book, Mama Got Rhythm, Daddy Got Rhyme.
All right, that sounds good. Okay, thank you. Mama Got Rhythm and Daddy Got Rhyme. And the illustrator of my book is a special person. It's Mario Moore. He is a well-known artist from Detroit. And when he originally illustrated my book, he actually was still a college student, and now he's gone on to do amazing things. So I just wanted to share that with you, because as you look at the illustrations in the book, boys and girls, and for those who are listening, I want you to know who did these amazing illustrations. So inside an apartment in Harlem, New York, lived Rhythm and Rhyme, and a family that had plenty of both. Daddy Rhymes could make a piano sing when he played, and Mama Rhymes could dance to any tune he played. Sometimes Daddy and Mama Rhymes would groove to a tune, and it didn't matter whether anyone else was asleep. Mama and Daddy could still get down to some down home blues or that music they called old school. Their daughter Jasmine loved music. She liked R&B. Jasmine didn't like jazz or blues. She didn't understand them. One day, while Mama Rhymes was dancing in the family room to a jazz tune, Jasmine asked, "Why do you like that music? It's old." Mama Rhymes said, "Baby, my music is your music. Didn't you know that?" Jasmine was confused. She looked at her mother strangely and said, "No, it's not." "Why, of course it is, baby," Mama replied. Mama Rhyme smiled at Jasmine and said, the musicians your dad and I listen to influence the musicians that you listen to. Like who? Jasmine asked. After overhearing this, Teddy Rhymes looked and said, baby, put on your shoes and we'll show you what we mean when we talk about jazz and rhythm and blues. Mama Rhymes grabbed Jasmine's hand and Daddy Rhymes began to play his piano and sing. As Armstrong would say, it don't mean a thing if you ain't got that swing. Bebop, bedoop, bebop, bedoop, bedoop. It don't mean a thing if you ain't got that swing. Bebop, bedoop, bebop, bedoop, bedoop. And that is called scatting. For those who are listening and who may not listen to jazz, that is called scatting. It's a type of singing that you will hear in jazz music. After Daddy Rhymes was done singing and playing, they headed to the Jazz Museum. They boarded a train and traveled to the Jazz at Lincoln Center, located at 60th Broadway in Manhattan, New York City. Boys and girls, and for those who are listening, if you've never been to New York City, I hope that you have a chance to go one day. And I hope that you have a chance to ride on the trains because they will take you many places throughout the city. And this is one of the places that the train will take you to. Once inside the museum, they visited the Ertegun Jazz Hall of Fame room. Inside, the room was crowded with people and screens were hanging on the wall showing photos of legendary jazz musicians. Mama and Daddy stopped at a photo. This is Dizzy Gillespie, the world's greatest trumpet player. He played in the Earl Haynes band and he taught himself how to play the trumpet before he was 12, Daddy Rhymes said. You should listen to A Night in Tunisia. It's the sound of what we call Afro-Cuban jazz. Afro-Cuban jazz combines African and Latin rhythms, Daddy Rhymes added. Jasmine listened to his music. She began to tap her foot. She liked his music. See, I told you that his music was good, Mama Rhymes said. Yeah, you were right. His music makes me want to dance, Jasmine said. What are you waiting for? Daddy Rhymes said. Let's swing. He grabbed Jasmine's hand and they began to swing. Have you ever heard music that just made you want to dance and made you want to swing? I know that I have. Before long, they moved to a photo of Louis Armstrong, who was best known for his great trumpet solos. Jasmine pushed the button and realized she liked his music too. Hey, his music kind of sounds like my R&B, Jasmine said. You're right, Mama said. The swing music style was developed in the early 1940s. It involves long sounds and bended notes. R&B music uses the same technique that they take sounds and bend the notes to make unique beats. R&B stands for rhythm and blues, Mama Rhymes added. And I would be curious to know how many of you actually play an instrument or once played an instrument. I know that when I was younger, I actually played the violin, which is not a jazz instrument, but it's a beautiful instrument. So if you play an instrument, that is amazing. And it's never too late to learn and it's never too early to start. Jasmine thought about her mother, what her mother said as they moved on to a photo of Duke Ellington. Now, here's a fine musician and composer, Daddy Rhymes declared. He played the piano, just like your daddy, Mama Rhymes said. They say Duke ruled the floor whenever his orchestra, the Washingtonians, played. His orchestra was so famous that they were broadcast on the radio live from the legendary Cotton Club. Jasmine asked, who's next? It looks like Billie Holiday, Daddy said. A photo of Billie Holiday with a white flower tucked in her hair hung on the wall. She was pretty, Jasmine said. Billie was beautiful, and so was her voice. You should listen to her song, Billie's Blues, Mama said. Jasmine pressed the music button and listened in amazement. Her music sounds soulful, Jasmine said. And Billie Holiday, whose real name is Eleanor Fagan Guff, that was her birth name. She was truly beautiful and she had a beautiful voice. Jasmine was about to ask who was next when she heard an announcement. The museum will close in 5 minutes. Jasmine felt sad because she didn't want to leave. Did you have fun? Daddy asked. Yes, but I wasn't ready to go, Jasmine said. We can come back another day, Mama said. That night, when Mama and Daddy Rhymes danced to jazz and rhythm and blues, guess what? Jasmine danced too. The end.
Thank you so much, Robin. We are so proud to have you as a UM Dearborn alumni. Thank you for taking time to speak with me today and for sharing your story and your fabulous book, Mama Got Rhythm and Daddy Got Rhyme.
Absolutely.
I look forward to, oh, sorry.
Absolutely. No, I'm just saying thank you once again. I've so enjoyed our conversation and this opportunity is truly an honor. And so thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And I was just going to say, I look forward to having you sign my copy real soon.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I will be happy to.
And again, I just want to thank our community for joining us. Go Blue, go Dearborn.
Go Blue. Go Blue.